Thank you. So take a few moments to get yourself comfortable, lying back into your space and giving yourself plenty of room to expand and widen. So perhaps turning the palms up towards the ceiling, maybe widening the hands and the feet, equal distance from the midline of the body. Widening through the hips, through the shoulders, softening the jaw, and resting the tongue in the well of the mouth. If you have any tension in the lower back, you can honour that space by bending the knees and perhaps even drawing the knees a little closer together to widen the space at the back of the pelvis. Our intention is to avoid any distraction, moving any clothing out of the way that might be digging in, making any little adjustments you need, so that you can fully unclench, release, and bring your awareness to the body. Our intention here is to soften the muscles, to release the joints, to let the weight of the bones sink a little more deeply into the earth beneath you. Bring your focus to the breath, following the breath from the tip of the nose along the nasal passages, slowing the breath down, deepening the inhalation, lengthening the exhalation. And again, becoming aware of that sense of an expansion, a widening, a softening and a releasing. Filling the lungs completely with each full inhalation. Emptying the lungs fully with each long breath out. Directing the breath to the base of the lungs. Reminding yourself to unclench as you release. Feeling the belly rise on the inhale, then fully soften and release on the exhale. Observing the breath to the belly, the chest and the collarbones. Releasing the breath from the collarbones, the chest and the belly last. That picture in your mind of filling a balloon from the bottom up, then emptying that balloon from the top down. Finding some space, finding some quiet in this deep yogic breath. Allow your breath to become a little noisier, again becoming a little more aware of your surroundings. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. If it feels right for you, release this next exhalation with an audible sigh, almost as a message to the body that it's time to let go of anything that may not be serving you, to prepare for the work of our practice today. Let the breath ease its way back to a natural, easy rhythm, maintaining that awareness on coming to the end of each full breath transaction. And once more paying attention to how you hold your body. Notice without judgment if you hold one shoulder a little higher, if one hip feels a little tighter than the other. And start to make adjustments now by extending the legs along the mat if the knees are bent, drawing the feet a little closer together, finding the hands either side of the hips, turning the palms up to the ceiling, shrugging the shoulders up towards the ears. Then as you exhale, pressing the fingertips down towards the feet. On the next inhale, lifting the arms overhead, extending all the way back to rest the backs of the hands to the floor. If that doesn't feel accessible to you, it's okay to float the hands an inch from the mat or the floor, perhaps bending the elbows or widening the arms, just to release that little bit of resistance through the shoulders, through the pectoral muscles. Now bring the palms together, creating an Anjali Mudra overhead. Feel the ears between the upper arms. Inhale to lengthen the fingertips away, pointing through the toes, taking a long stretch through the front of the body. As you exhale, bring the thumbs together in an interlock, draw the toes towards the shins. Then breathe out, squeezing to the left, turning the head into the right armpit. Inhaling to return to center, taking again that lovely long stretch, pointing through fingers and toes. Then again coming back to draw thumbs together, heels in flexion, as you push to the right side, turning the chin into the left armpit. Inhale again to return to center. Take that full long body stretch. Then on an out breath, hug both knees in towards the chest, placing the hands to the shins. A little gentle rock from one side to the other. Then reposition both feet to the floor. Feel the heels hip width apart, a little gap between the knees, between the insides of the feet. Hands again either side of the hips, palms turned up to the ceiling, shoulder blades drawn together. As you exhale, draw the tummy button in. As you inhale, lift and lengthen through the right leg, then tip that toe in towards the shin. Press through the heel. Inhale to point, exhale to flex. Bring the hands as an interlock behind that right thigh. You might want to try to nudge the thigh a little closer to the chest, pushing a little more keenly through the heel. Inhaling again to point, exhaling to flex. Then bend that right knee, placing the hands either on the shin or on the back of the thigh if that's more comfortable. Again, applying a little pressure so we can round the lower back to the floor, adjusting to direct that knee out towards the right shoulder, widening the space in the lower back. Then keep hold of that shin as you draw little circles with the knee in towards the midline of the body. Then change direction, take those circles the opposite way. Bring the knee back in towards center. Release the hands from the top of the shin and extend the foot forward, resting the heel an inch from the floor. So that left knee remains bent, the right heel just hovering off the ground. Inhaling once more to lift the arms overhead, softening the flats of the shoulder blades back to the floor. Then use the heel rather than the toe to trace 3 wide circles with the foot, creating space in and around the hip socket, changing direction to activate those inner and outer thigh muscles. Now rest that heel an inch from the floor. Inhale to point the toe. On the exhale, bend the right knee in, push the lower back to the floor and crunch the chest up towards the thigh. Inhale to lengthen back. Exhale, engage the core, crunch up. So always be mindful when we do these little crunch postures that we don't lead with the chin. So the intention is to keep the gaze up towards the ceiling, to keep the back of the neck in a nice neutral line. Out breath on the effort. As you come to the in-breath, a full lengthen back. As you come to the next exhale, we'll prepare to hold in a static contraction here, bringing the hands once more to the back of the thigh, lifting the shoulders a little more from the floor, keeping the collarbones released back and down. Bringing the foot to flexion, inhaling to point the toe, exhaling to flex. Inhaling to point, exhaling to flex. Keep the hand on the back of the thigh, then gently start to roll down through the spine. Rest the back of the head to the floor, release the hands from the back of the leg and replace the foot to the mat. On the next inhalation, lift and lengthen through the left leg. So again, we'll start by gently mobilising the ankle, pointing and flexing, trying where we can to take that bend out of the knee, finding a little length at the back of the calf into the hamstring. Bring the foot to full flexion, and again we'll use the hands to guide the thigh a little bit closer towards the chest. We're still relatively cold and tight in the hamstring, so don't overdo it. Press a little more keenly through the heel. Inhale to point, exhale to flex. Then on the out breath, hug that knee in towards the chest. It's that little bit of pressure on the shin to round the lower back to the floor. Directing the knee out towards the left shoulder. Then doing that little circle action, drawing the circles in towards the midline of the body. Changing direction. Just warming up that space in and around the hip socket. It's nice and gentle on the lower back. Now take the hands away from the shin, extend that left leg forward, rest the heel an inch from the floor. Inhale to point the toe, exhale to flex. On the next inhale, lift the arms again overhead, resting the backs of the hands to the floor. Keep that left foot in flexion as we trace those 3 wide circles. Opposite way, recruiting inner and outer thighs. Resting the heel again an inch from the floor. Inhaling to point the toes, lifting the hands just about an inch off the floor. Then on the exhale, coming into the crunch on this side. So as the knee comes towards the chest, we lift through the shoulders, again avoiding that tilting the neck. Let's not draw the chin towards the chest. Out breath on the effort. In breath for a full release back. We'll do 3 more at this nice gentle pace on this side. Preparing after this next one to pause in a static contraction. Hands to the back of the thigh, shoulders remain lifted. Coming into flexion on that left foot. Inhaling to point, exhaling to flex. Pointing, then flexing, keeping that static contraction going. Then on the out breath, gently rolling down through the spine. Resting the back of the head to the floor, hugging the right knee in. So the thighs are now above the belly, hands to the shins, a little pressure just to rock that lift in the lower back again to the floor. Now widen the arms into a T shape. On an out breath, roll both knees to the right, turning your gaze along the length of the left arm. Breathing that left shoulder back to the floor. Directing the breath to that resistance, that space at the side of the chest. As you exhale, engaging the core, rolling the weight of the knees through centre, then taking the knees again to the opposite side. This time bringing your gaze along the length of the right arm. So the focus is on keeping that right shoulder released to the floor. on relaxing and letting go the tension at the side of the rib cage, softening in and around the edge of the hip. Then as you exhale, again engage the core and roll the knees back towards centre. Let's keep the left knee bent in a 90-degree angle as we push the right heel straight up towards the ceiling. So we're bringing the sole of the foot parallel to the ceiling, resting the back of the head to the floor, inhaling to point that right toe, exhaling to flex, repositioning the hands either side of the hips, turning the palms up towards the ceiling just to avoid us grabbing hold of the floor. Now let's focus on that core engagement. Exhaling to draw the tummy button in, pushing the lower back into the floor, then lowering that right heel down, resting that heel an inch from the mat. If there's too much lift in the lower back, you can always nudge that left knee a little closer to the chest. Focus on the breath here. Avoid clenching the jaw. Come to the end of each full breath transaction. Inhaling to the belly, the chest and the collarbones. Exhaling from the collarbones, the chest and the belly last. On the exhale, engage the core. Bring the weight of that right knee back to centre. Reposition that knee as a 90-degree angle above the hip. Then we'll repeat by extending the left leg forward. So again, we're resting that heel an inch from the floor, mindfully resting the weight of the arms through the backs of the hands, the shoulders release, the collarbones wide. Sending the breath to the belly, the chest and the collarbones. Releasing from the collarbones, the chest and the belly last. Then on that next exhale, draw that knee back in and hug both knees towards the chest. Now it may serve you better to place the hands underneath the fleshy part of the bottom, so just below that flat bone in the lower back, the sacrum. As we push both heels up towards the ceiling, bringing the soles of the feet parallel to the ceiling, observing that we've perhaps still got a little bend in the knees due to the hamstrings being a little tight. Let's focus on core again. So as you exhale, draw the tummy button in, push the lower back to the floor, start to lower the heels down just about a third of the way. That will give you slack behind the back of the legs, so you can push a little more keenly through the heels and try not to be resting the feet together. Inhale to point both toes, exhale to flex. Then on the out breath, hug the knees in towards the chest. Sorry, that was quite hard yards. Then gently rock from one hip to the other. Replace both feet on the mat. Before we come to a seated position, we'll just try and get rid of some of that tension that we're now holding in the belly. So my suggestion is we're going to come to a bridge pose. So draw the heels a tiny bit closer to the bottom than you would normally. Keep that hip width distance between the heels, the insides of the feet parallel. Bring the hands either side of the hips, then push into the soles of the feet, lift the bottom from the floor. So you might notice a deeper stretch to the front of the thighs. We want to try and release the abdomen as well. So on an inhale, lift the arms overhead, lengthening that stretch through the front of the body. Inhaling to press the shins forward, lift the thighs higher, softening the weight of the shoulders back to the floor. Avoid clenching the bottom here. Press the shins forward, open through the chest. Then start at the space between the shoulder blades as we gently release vertebra by vertebra back to the floor. Now, as we have our arms behind us, there comes a point where the shoulders will almost want to peel from the floor. So keep the weight constant here. Roll through middle back into the lower back. Then on and out breath, engage the core, draw the knees in towards the chest. A little bit of core engagement, repositioning the hands behind the thighs, and rocking yourself up into a seated position. And we'll almost stay on the sit bones as we roll ourselves back. So just rocking forward and back, waking up the spine, activating the core, then coming all the way up to a fully seated position. Lovely stuff. Perfect. So we didn't do much with the hips. We did a little bit of mobilization at the beginning. So we need to get into the hips now a little. So if we come back to that idea of drawing the heels a little closer to the bottom than you would normally, widening the knees, lifting and lengthening out of the sit bones, then as you exhale, gently drawing the shoulders forward. So we're simply bringing the weight of the upper body into that space in the inner thighs, keeping the shoulders released back and down. Engage the core, then inhale to return to center, lining up the back of the head, the back of the tailbone. Exhaling to widen the knees a little further. Then lifting up, lengthening out the sit bones again. And we'll switch this Baddha Konasana into a leg cross. So draw the left heel in towards the ground, place the right heel in front of left, reposition the hands behind the hips, lift yourself out of the sit bones, lengthen back to center, replace the hands in front of the ankles, then on and out breath, start to gently walk forward. So remember, in this walk forward position, it's not unusual that the bottom starts to lift from the floor. Ideally, we want to keep that weight connected, perhaps bringing the elbows a little closer to the floor as we sink a little deeper into the space between the thighs. For those of us who are quite comfortable in this posture, we'll hold it here for a little longer by bringing one fist on top of the other and allowing the forehead to come to rest. Remember, there's no rush to get into that full forward fold position, particularly if it's creating curvature in the spine for you. If you're more comfortable a little higher, work on drawing the shoulder blades together, opening through the chest, pushing a little more gently into the palms of the hands. Then recreating that link with the hands on the floor as you lift the upper body and walk the hands back towards the ankles. Nice. So we've created a little slack in the inner thighs. We can lift and lengthen a little more out of the sit bones, turning the backs of the hands to rest on the inner thighs, inhaling to squeeze the shoulders up towards the ears. As you exhale, release and let the shoulders go. Inhale to squeeze up, exhale to shrug and let them go. Follow the nose rather than the chin so that we don't look up as you turn the gaze over the right shoulder. Keep that core engagement as you return the nose to center. Then turn the gaze over the left shoulder. And again, bring the gaze back to center. Taking your time to slowly nod the chin towards the chest, widening the space between the shoulder blades, gently lengthening the back of the neck, engaging the core, inhaling to lift back to center. Taking the hands now behind the hips, shoulder blades drawn together, keeping the sit bones connected to the floor as you lift through the chest, opening the gaze towards the ceiling, drawing the shoulder blades together. As you exhale, engage the core, nod the chin forward, underside of the chin parallel to the floor as you reposition the hands to an interlock behind the lower back. So we want to keep that sense of almost slightly leaning backwards, lining up the back of the head with the tailbone, then exhaling to draw the hands away from the lower back, opening through the chest. Then release, separating the hands, sliding the right hand a little further away from the body, pushing into that palm as you look up to the middle finger of the left hand, bringing that top arm over the midline of the body, lifting your gaze up to that middle finger, deepening the stretch to the side of the waist, making sure the sit bones are equally weighted. Inhaling to lift back to center, extending the left arm away. Same action, so we're nice and wide through the chest, deepening the stretch to the side of the waist, lengthening on the inhale, on the exhale, engaging the core, coming back towards center. Now extend both arms forward at shoulder height, bring the palms together, stacking right forefinger over left, opening the hands to the heart, elbows soft. Gently nod the chin again towards the chest. So a small release here at the back of the neck between the shoulder blades. Engage the core. Then start to roll the lower back towards the back of the room. So coming into a cat stretch here, widening the space between the shoulders, keeping that chin nodded forward. Then inhaling to lift back into the sit bones, turning the hands inside out, lifting the arms up overhead, pushing through the palms, softening the shoulders down away from the ears, keeping that nicely centered weight as again we come into an extension, leaning to the right, turning the chin into the left armpit, engaging the core, returning the head to center as we realign, then squeezing to the opposite side, lifting again back towards center, then resetting the hands back in front of the heart, separating the hands, and then switching that leg cross over, so opposite foot in front or behind. Perfect. So reposition the hands again behind the hips. We'll come back into that opening through the heart space. So we'll start having the sit bones on the floor, possibly just fingertips at this point reaching the floor, opening the chest, turning the gaze up towards the ceiling. Then taking your weight a little deeper back as we sink onto the palms of the hands, then countering that by pressing the shins forward, lifting the bottom from the floor, opening through the front of the body, wide through the chest, open through the hips, through the thighs, through the belly. Then replacing the sit bones to the floor, lifting back into center, replacing the hands in front of the ankles. Then we'll repeat that little forward fold that we did on the first side. So make sure that the hands are shoulder width distance apart. And remember, the action here is to soften the elbows towards the floor. And it may be that one side is more accessible to you than the other. Oftentimes it's the joints that stop us, so ankles can be in the way. Knees can be a little bit grumpy in this posture. And lower backs can often tell us we can't do it, when actually we're recruiting that space in and around the hips. We're slackening the inner thighs, so there's nothing really to stop the lower back from joining in. Bring the gaze to the end of the fingertips, keep the core engaged. Trace that line from the back of the head to the tailbone, then walk the hands back towards the ankles. Reposition the right hand behind that hip. Inhale to lift up and lengthen out of the sit bones. Bring the left hand to the right knee. Keep drawing a line by tracing the side of the rib cage towards the back of the room. Inhaling to lift up out of the sit bones. Then as you exhale, keep the core engaged. Bring opposite hand to opposite knee. Let the head follow. Inhale to lift up. Exhale to squeeze a little more deeply into that twist. Bring your gaze back to face forward. Then we'll take the feet apart, coming into a gentle wide leg fold. So I say gentle because we're going to keep a little gap under the knees, toes pointing up towards the ceiling, lifting cleanly out of the sit bones. Then on an out breath, beginning that little walk forward. So same intention as before, rather than dropping the head, curving the spine, try to keep the back of the head lined up with the tailbone. Visualize drawing the shoulder blades together. Then as you exhale, squeeze the elbows a little more deeply towards the floor. So we're finding that space in the inner thighs. There's quite a lot of resistance here. So work with the breath just to find that release. Engage the core, keep the shoulder blades drawn together, then walk the hands back again towards center. We'll exaggerate that gap behind the knees, lifting the knees up. It might be that the soles of the feet are on the floor, or you might be like me, more comfortable with the toes up. Repositioning the hands here just underneath the calves. Then we're literally going to turn the wrists so that the hands travel underneath the calves. So we almost like create a little more widening, pushing with the elbows to widen the space in the inner thighs, inhaling to lift the chest, then exhaling to lean forward, bringing the elbows towards the floor. They're not necessarily going to get on the floor. Mine won't. Do let us know if yours do. Keep those shoulder blades together, easing and deepening. Then engage the core. Make sure you've got that lovely support for the lower back, repositioning the hands underneath the shoulders, pushing into the palms, then walking the hands back towards center. Perfect. So when we come back to our Baddha Konasana position, soles of the feet together, we should be able to find a little more release in the inner thighs, feel a little more comfortable about lifting and lengthening, then easing forward into this fold. Remember, we never want to pull the feet towards us, so make sure that your touch is very light. There's no white knuckles. And every out breath, hinging a little more deeply into the space. Engaging the core, inhaling to lift back to center. Then we'll simply slide the knees towards one another. We're going to come into an all fours position, but the knees will be wide again. So reset, starting with knees under hips, wrists under shoulders, then turn the knees out, bring the tips of the toes together, lower the elbows down towards the floor, tips of the thumbs together, then push the sit bones back towards the heels, allowing the weight of the sit bones to keep lengthening and softening the spine. It might be that you can bring the forehead to the floor, that you can quiet the shoulders. Then push into the forearms, lift the head, restack the shoulders over the elbows, walk the feet back, turning the toes under, lifting the knees from the floor, coming into a nice low, controlled plank. Thighs parallel to the floor, the tiniest of lifts in the bottom, wide through the chest. Focusing on the breath here, unclenching the jaw. Then bringing the thighs, the belly and the chest to the floor. Positioning the elbows either side of the chest, the palms either side of the head, shoulder blades drawn together. Press the thighs into the mat. Inhale to push into the forearms, lifting the chest. As you exhale, turning the over one shoulder. As you inhale, look ahead. Exhale to look over the other shoulder. Then inhale again to look ahead. On the out breath, lower down. Fold that right heel in towards the bottom. You can either reach hold of the hem of the leggings. If you have a strap, you might prefer to use it, or take hold of the ankle, pushing into the thigh, pushing into the left forearm, inhaling to lift the chest and deepening the stretch to the front of the thigh, into the hip flexor. Then releasing bringing that foot to the floor. Right arm comes forward, left heel comes in. Again, reaching towards that ankle, pushing into the forearm, inhaling to lift the chest, deepening the stretch to the front of the thigh into the hip flexor. Then relaxing that space, particularly in the lower back, as you release the foot to the floor. Bring both hands forward, let the forehead rest to the mat and unclench the buttocks and the lower back. Reposition the hands either side of the chest. If you know that your lower back is a little bit grumbly in Cobra, by all means stay in the Sphinx posture, keeping the elbows to the floor. Then bring the elbows in towards the rib cage, push into the palms. Keep those thighs stuck to the floor as you inhale to lift the chest. Keep those shoulders back and down, relaxed through the upper body. Then as you exhale, engage the core, push the sit bones back, coming into a nice extended child's pose. So the palms almost feel like they're stuck to the floor in front of you, positioning the ears between the upper arms. So slight stretch, a little bit of tension perhaps on the shoulders, on the triceps, maybe into that space at the side of the ribcage. Keep pushing the sit bones towards the heels, lifting the fingertips, pressing the wrists to the floor. Then replace the palms to the mat. Again, we're going to slide all the way forward, bringing the chest fully to the floor. Then extending both arms forward, bringing the forehead to rest. Ideally, we want to rest in centre, but it's not that pleasant for breathing. So if you have to turn the head, just take note to turn the head halfway through. So we'll start by lifting both arms from the mat or from the floor as they are extended in front of you. You'll feel it more comfortable to have the hands a little wider than shoulder width distance. Try not to hold the breath. Then on and out breath, replace the hands to the floor. Lovely, that looked very strong. Let those shoulders relax. Bring your focus now to the lower body. So as you exhale, let's do this one leg at a time. The key is to keep the hips square as you inhale to lift the right leg. Keep the hands on the floor. Then replace that foot to the floor. Engage the core, lift the left leg. Try not to twist as you do so, so the hips should remain level, the buttocks remain soft. Then replace that foot to the floor. Take a rest here, so softening all the muscles of the spine. Then exhale, engage the core, lift both legs from the mat. Just keep your hands comfortably on the floor, neck relaxed. Then release and relax, softening back to the floor again. On the next inhale, let's lift right arm, then left leg. So as soon as you do that, your body will start to kind of come up with modifications. So the key to remember is that the shoulders are parallel to the floor, that the hips are parallel to the floor, that you're not kind of twisting yourself in the middle to lift either opposite arm. Replace the hand and the foot. Let's come again to left arm this time, right leg. Then replace the hand and the leg to the floor. Good. Extend both arms forward. Lift both arms, both legs. Try not to hold the breath. So focus on that deep inhalation, that full exhalation. Then on the next out breath, let yourself sink back into the floor. Inhale, lift both arms, both legs. Skydiving. It's because I'm not doing it. You're all going, yeah, wee? I don't think so. Replace the hands to the floor. Lovely. Let everything once more relax. And I'm going to suggest that we place one hand on top of the other and bring the forehead to rest here. So we're coming into a gentle crocodile pose. So you're resting, as it were, on the soles, the tops of the feet. It might be that the heels roll in or out. That's just to accommodate how tight your back is. So don't worry about it. Don't change it. Bring your focus again to the breath. So we've practiced quite a few times today that deep yogic breath. Inhaling to the belly, the chest and the collarbones. Exhaling from the collarbones, the chest and the belly last. So it feels as though when you inhale, you're lifting up off the floor. As you exhale, you're fully releasing the weight of your bones back into the earth. Do one further. Lift. Then as you exhale, let that sink again into the floor. Now we'll extricate the hands from underneath the forehead. We're going to bring both heels in towards the bottom, taking hold again of either the ankles, the hem of the leggings, or using a strap. Noticing that the tendency is for the heels to go wide to accommodate. It's easier to work the hips than it is to stretch the front of the thigh. So let's draw the heels a tiny bit closer together. Feel that they're directly above the sit bones. Push your weight into the thighs, into the belly, lift the chest, draw the heels closer to the bottom. Open through the chest. Then on and out breath, release. Let the feet come back to the floor. Reposition the hands either side of the chest. Then lengthen back one more time in our child's pose. Take that long stretch through the spine where you need it. There might be a little bit of tension there, particularly after the back bend. Then we'll lift back up into an all fours position. We'll do a little cat stretch. We won't follow it up with cow because we've just done quite a big back bend. So turn both toes under, exhale, draw the tummy button in, roll up through the spine and nod the chin towards the chest. Come back again to that neutral spine position, sliding the right foot back, resting on the top of the left foot. So we're really focusing on that action, pressing the right heel towards the floor, deepening the stretch to the back of the calf. Then we'll come back up onto the toe of the right foot, wide through the chest, floating that heel up, extending the left arm forward. So as the right heel is lifted, the left arm extends forward, shoulders and hips parallel to the floor, elbows soft, jaw unclenched. Then replace that hand, replace that knee. Take the left foot back, start with that lovely lengthening calf stretch. Come onto the big toe, then float that heel up, extending the opposite arm forward. And remember, if balance is not your friend today, you can always touch that toe back to the floor. It's better to get the technique right than be wobbling about. Wide through the collarbones, engaged in the core. Replacing that hand to the mat, drawing that knee back in. Perfect. Now bring that right leg forward, bringing the knee into a 90-degree angle. So the knee should be set just a little bit back from the heel. So if we start with the knee too far forward, we don't give ourselves a lot of space to travel into. Make sure that you're resting on the shin of the back foot rather than hovering about on the knee joint. Then bring the hands to an Anjali Mudra. Inhale to lift the arms up overhead. So straight line to begin with. Then as you exhale, sink into that back hip. So opening that left thigh into the hip flexor. So you might end up in a 90-degree angle on the right knee, keeping that knee trained over the second toe. Then bring that hand back to heart, hinge forward, hands either side of the foot. We'll take a moment just to lift that back knee up, bouncing that ball of the foot in just so that you don't feel overstretched here. Keeping what do I want to do? Left hand on the floor, turning the belly in towards the thigh, lifting the right hand up, pointing those fingers towards the ceiling. Beautiful. Then replace that hand to the floor, push the right foot back, come into a full plank. So same rules apply as the low plank. We don't want too much lift in the bottom. It creates excess tension in the wrists and the shoulders. So let's recruit the core, the legs, all the strong muscles to do the heavy work. Then sink the knees back down. Reposition the wrists under the shoulders. Turn the toes under, exhale, roll up again into your cat stretch. Nodding the chin to the chest. Reclaiming that neutral spine position. Resting on the top of the right foot as you bring the left heel forward. So again, we start a little shy of the heel, bringing the knee over the second toe, hands in front of the heart. First action is to lift the arms up overhead, opening into the side of the rib cage. Our next release allows the body weight to just gently edge forward, opening into that right thigh, into the hip flexor, keeping that left knee over the second toe. Good stabilization for the knee. Then engage the core, bring the hands back to heart. Again, we'll sink forward, bringing both hands to the floor, turning the back toe under, sliding that back foot in a little just so you feel secure. Right hand to the floor this time, turning the belly in towards the thigh, lifting the gaze up to the middle finger of the left hand. So using the out breath to extend into that twist to deepen the stretch at the side of the buttock. Then replacing that hand to the floor. Instead of going back into plank, we're going to bring that right foot forward, coming into a forward fold. So I'm going to say allow as much bend in the knees you think you need. Wrap the hands around the elbows. So for a moment, we're just hanging the upper body weight forward. So resting the top of the head parallel to the floor. Then by increments, we'll start to take a little more length into the back of the thighs, pushing into the soles of the feet, lifting the bottom, lengthening that stretch into the hamstrings, ideally avoiding curvature in the spine, so keeping the upper body nice and long. Then replacing the hands onto the thighs, exhaling, drawing the tummy button in. Keep the gaze at the toes as you roll through the spine, rolling the shoulders back and down. And when you're ready, lifting the gaze forward, turning the palms towards the front of the room, leveling up the top of the head with the ceiling. Engage the core, lift the right foot from the mat, so the knee is in line with the hip, the underside of the foot parallel to the floor. The hands are simply there to give you a little bit of balance. So you can bring the hands in front of the heart if that gives you better focus, that single point, that single line of energy. Using the big toe to draw 3 circles in towards the midline of the body. Then changing direction, taking the circles the opposite way. Then replacing that foot to the floor. Keeping that hip width distance, don't be tempted to bring the feet too close. Then lift the opposite knee. Same idea. Finding the balance. And bringing in that little ankle rotation. Coming back to balance, extending the arms overhead. Not shuffling like I'm doing. Then bringing the hands back to heart, replacing the foot to the floor. Lovely. Bring the hands either side of the hips, nice and soft in the knees as you exhale, hinging forward, coming into a gentle release to the back of the hamstrings. Taking a little more length here by ironing out the bend in the knees, pushing the sit bones to the back of the room, drawing the shoulder blades together, extending the sternum forward, sliding the right arm forward, feeling the ear in the inside of the upper arm, taking the left arm forward, pushing through the sit bones. Nice long stretch here. Then replacing the hands onto the thighs, drawing the shoulder blades together. A deeper bend in the knees as you slide the sit bones back. Lifting your gaze forward now rather than down. Then extending the arms forward again. So coming into a chair pose, keeping the arms low so we don't overdo it for the lower back. Every out breath, bringing the bottom a little lower, pressing the sit bones to the back of the room, keeping that diagonal line from the back of the head to the tailbone. Focusing on the breath, never holding the breath. Then bring the hands back down either side of the calves, draw the shoulder blades together, engage the core. Inhale to push into the soles of the feet and lift up. Replace the hands into the space in the lower back so we have support there, fingertips pressing down, shoulder blades drawn together. Tiny bit of slack in the knees. We want a little bit of give in the thighs, but we don't want so much give that we end up curving through the hips. So push into the soles of the feet, lift the sternum, lean into your palms and open the heart towards the ceiling. Try not to push the hips forward if you can. Then as you exhale, engage the core, lengthen back to center. Bring the hands again either side of the hips, squeezing the shoulders up towards the ears. Then as you exhale, release. Using the hands now to draw little circles with the wrists. Changing direction, taking those circles the opposite way. Then recruiting our jazz hands, flicking the wrists, arcing the arms all the way up, overhead, and bringing it back down. Let's not look at the bingo wings. Let's forget about those. We'll get to those another day. Then when you're ready, I'll invite you to come back down onto the floor. So when we do our final Shavasana today, I'm going to use a new instrument that I bought before Christmas. Those of you who've been in the room with me will have probably experienced it. I'm not sure how well it'll work over Zoom. That's why I kind of hesitate sometimes. So I'm going to be using some Koshi Chimes, which are quite a feminine energy. They're very light. And they work, I think they work very well with elementals, with fairies, with dragons. So kind of if you are keen to work with the Fae energy, what you will feel is a gentle tightening around the rib cage. That's where you'll feel them coming in. So if that's something that you want to try, you can focus in on where you feel that energy coming in. Otherwise, just enjoy the sound. It's a very relaxing sound. And as I say, I'm hoping that it will work over the airwaves on Zoom. I know that sometimes the sound can be a little distorted. So take a few moments to just get yourself comfortable, to get yourself warm. Reminding yourself the importance of unclenching. So checking in with those parts of the body where you know you hold tension, or perhaps where you know stress manifests for you. So if you need to honour the lower back, keep the knees bent. If you have tension in the shoulders, mindfully breathe the shoulders down away from the ears. Relax the jaw. Soften the eyebrows. And once more, return your full attention to the breath. Send the breath to the parts of the body that need it most. Coming to the end of each full breath transaction, expanding into the space that surrounds you with every inhalation, releasing, widening, softening the weight of your body into the earth with every full exhalation. If you find your attention wanders, simply bring your focus back to the breath. Inhaling deeply, exhaling fully. Now lean into the quiet, the calm. Check in again with your breath. Deepening the inhalation, lengthening the exhalation. Allowing your breath to become a little noisier. Re-establishing the connection with the earth. Re-grounding. So sometimes the energy of the Koshi chimes can be a little bit high frequency. So particularly for those of you who are of a Vata constitution, you might need to take a little longer just to reground. So start by sliding the feet a little closer together, then bending the knees up so the soles of the feet are connected to the floor. If you have the palms turned up towards the ceiling, just take a moment to turn the palms towards the floor. Feeling that cooling energy from the earth up through the feet, through the hands, through the back of your head. Noticing the texture of your clothing against your skin. Cooling the room against your face, your hands and your feet. As you gradually reawaken here. Perhaps wiggling fingers and toes. Taking a stretch if you wish. Hugging the knees to the chin if you prefer. The chest even rather than the chin. Then in your own time, rolling to one side and returning again to a comfortable seated position. Bring your hands to an Anjali Mudra. Touch to the head for kind thoughts, to the lips for kind words, and to the heart for kind intentions. The light in me honours the light in you. Namaste.